42?
Episode 42.
Episode
the big
40. Yeah, the big 4-2. Jackie Robinson. That is a good 4-2, though. It's a good number. Welcome back. We are so thankful you're here on the Morning Brushback. Appreciate you. Bobby, you've had an interesting week on Twitter. Do you want to elaborate on some of the litigation tweets that you've sent out here?
I'm what the kids call semi-viral famous now, just for a tweet. So I put out a tweet. I won't read it verbatim, but basically there were two instances just this past week involving some parents. One with my program, one with opposing team we played. Our program was just threatening litigation against myself for playing time, which was handled. I talked to the parents. Whatever, had conversations. And then I believe it was Saturday. So Saturday afternoon, we're playing a team. We're in Indianapolis. I did the podcast Friday from Indianapolis. So we're playing in Indianapolis. Game ends. We win the game 14-13. Real barn burner of sloppy baseball. And I'm walking to the car after the game, and the other team's coach is sitting in his car, and a parent crosses my face, just sprinting across the parking lot. And when sprinting, like, it was 100 degrees outside. I mean, this guy was breaking a sweat, and he's screaming, "Expect litigation, expect litigation, expect litigation," at the coach's car. Mind you, I was there the whole game. I didn't see the coach do anything absurd to any of the players. I didn't see him say anything ignorant or anything of that matter to any of the players. I did witness some of their parents yelling from the stands. What they thought they were yelling at was something that one of our players said. The umpire pulls his mask off, stops the game, yells back into the stands and says that their catcher is the one saying it to shut up and let the kids play. So that was like a mid-game incident. I didn't tweet it out. I just thought it was funny. Umpire had a pretty good handle on everything that was going on. But we're walking, guys running across the parking lot yelling, "Expect litigation," at this coach who's sitting in his car with the window up because it's 100 out. I'm not sure if he heard him until he got right up close to the window. And everybody that had just either played in that game or was a spectator was in that parking lot. Not exactly the biggest parking lot. I would have been embarrassed. I don't know how the parents felt. It was something to witness, just for this, like, to wrap youth sports into a nice little bow. What it is. It was just, it was totally uncalled for. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what the guy could have done that would have provoked this parent to do that. The starting pitcher of the game threw 2 pitches, said his shoulder hurt. Coach took him out. The coach, I was coaching third base. The coach went out there and he's like, are you all right? And he goes, "My arm hurts." And the coach just said verbatim, he's like, "You need to tell me that before we start the game." And he said, the kid said it just started to hurt the second pitch. So
you think it was that, or?
I don't know if it was that. We're just speculating
at this point.
Speculating, but that was the only thing during the game. I mean, the coach he was not swearing. If anything, I was definitely out of the two of us, the one louder, yelling about, where the kids need to be. I was on our kids a lot more than he was on their kids.
Yeah.
And he was, by all accounts, not swearing, I don't know. I honestly, I couldn't tell you why this parent was so upset. Maybe the kid didn't play. Who knows? But it was very inappropriate, just from the tournament director, guy that's running the site, and it was an off-site, so it's basically a college kid just sitting there keeping score.
Yeah.
Had to come out. Parents were. It got heated, and it was put into a tweet because it was so insane. I felt like I needed to share it with the Twitterverse, and it went. Like to 100 some retweets, and it went crazy. people sharing
And it
their
really
own
made your
stories.
weekend. That's all you want to be is Twitter famous. That's you in a nutshell.
I basically want to make sure that anything absurd I witness in my own life, everyone else gets to share in it.
This seems accurate. Well, I mean, the weird thing, I think it's sad because obviously there's way more good parents than there are bad ones as far as sports. But just like everything in life, imagine you write a nice article or you make a whatever. You're always going to remember the 3 people that were jerks to you about it that thought it was trash, right?
Yep.
Then the 97 people that liked it and read it. So, I mean, yeah, it's sad that we always highlight the negative stuff in life because we do. And parents, the vast majority are great and they're fine and they get it for the most part. And then there's a large chunk in the bell curve that probably doesn't quite understand what's important, but they're still not psychotic about it. Like they're just still good. They just wish they could probably do better if they had a little more info and coaching as what a sports parent should be, what they should do and what they shouldn't. I don't think it comes from a place of like nastiness. You know what I mean? I think it just comes from a place of like they don't know what's protocol. But then there's a lot of psychos that want to litigate about calling a 2-2 change up. It's like okay.
It's
I don't know. That's fascinating. I mean,
some of the responses were good. Like there were some of the responses on Twitter were good. Some of them were a little head scratchy.
Well, again, that's Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. But most of them were good. Definitely. I definitely had a bunch of people reach out to me. The second one wasn't me. That wasn't somebody running at me across the parking lot. It was just the second instance of threatening to sue I saw in a week.
You've heard the word litigation on a baseball field more than I've ever heard it in my
twice in a week, which is impressive.
Career.
It was impressive. So I felt like I should just, I don't know, let everybody know that this is probably not an appropriate way to attack your son's coach. Or it's not, you shouldn't be attacking him at all. Like he's not, I've had this discussion obviously a bunch since I tweeted it.
We don't know the context. Maybe he just and you weren't looking. He just quickly punched the kid in the face. You don't know. Maybe that happened in the 4th inning.
If he did,
he rolls over a ground ball and he punched him in the face real fast. You don't know.
Even in that scenario,
it's a quick jab. Maybe he's like Floyd Mayweather, just like lightning fast, and no one caught it but the kid's dad. Like he saw it.
Even in that scenario, if you're the dad, I feel like you punch him first and then say expect litigation second.
That's true. That's true.
So,
you definitely go take him down.
You have to punch. If someone punches my kid, I feel like I'd have to punch them back. I don't want to litigate.
Certainly you would. Which also coincidentally, did you see that softball video from a softball tournament?
No, but it sounds just the lead-in.
Well, I don't know what the context was, but there's like a 5-minute video of parents not letting the umpires leave the field essentially after the game.
Oh,
and then one of them like made it physical, and then an umpire like punched a guy in the face, and I don't know who was defending who. I didn't like. You have a right to defend yourself, obviously, if things get physical. I don't know. I didn't care at all, like who was in the right. People were all speculating about it. But, just like another on-field adults brawling situation. It's like, what's happening in the world? But again, that's also not normal. It's like, that's what's so weird about today's society is that this is like, there's never been a time where literally everything we do is caught on video. Like literally everything is caught on video. And so these incidences get brought up as if they're commonplace, which it's not clear that they are. Like I've never seen parents brawl at the field. I've seen some parents do weird things, but not that often either. Because again, like I said, most parents are pretty great. They're solid. But these get brought to light, and you're like, oh, the youth sports is just decaying into this terrible place. But I'm not sure that it is that much. Like it's not. No. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I always said we're very lucky at my academy, and part of that's probably the Midwest. I think the Midwest people they're just a little different than they are on the East Coast.
We are.
And you're in Chicago. I mean, it's not, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I think there's just like a more, probably bad. They're probably just a little better than the East Coast, but maybe a little less entitlement. But regardless, there's just, I don't know. it seems like on one hand it is like the apocalypse because of the way media is. Again, everything's caught on tape, but then it's probably not really that way. So I don't know.
It was quite the sight. I felt compelled to share it. I thought it was hilarious that I heard a threatening to sue twice in a week on a baseball field. Well, my overarching point of the tweet was, because they're both it both happened to be 15U baseball. I said, is there any wonder where kids are getting like their behavior from? Like, if this is what I'm witnessing from the parents, is it a wonder that we've got, and we don't really have problem kids in my program that much, but that seems to be something that resonates on Twitter. Like, oh, kids are disrespectful at a younger age. Like they don't show as much respect. They act out. They feel entitled, quote unquote. So that was kind of my overarching point. Like, well, if this is what's the adults are acting like, you can't expect the kids to be, more mature or have more of a, I guess, adult-like outlook. What do you would consider adult-like outlook when this is what they're seeing? I mean, they're 15 years old. They're seeing their parents run across a parking lot yelling at their coach. Probably makes them feel a little bit like I can do what I want. So,
well, that's not wrong. Like, I mean, kids definitely emulate adults for better, for worse. But yeah, I don't know. It's a fascinating time we live in. In other news, I went for a 30-minute run the other day and only breathed out of my nose as an experiment. Because we were talking a little about breathing last time. You see my tweet?
I saw you tweet that, and I was trying to wrap my head around. Were you just trying to punish yourself, or?
Dude, so this book, we didn't get into this last episode, but this book Breath by James Nestor, which I recommend, it's really interesting. It's not just about like performance, but just about health in general and the way our bodies change from like mouth breathing and the food that we eat and stuff like that. But essentially it's like very well known in the animal kingdom and humans are animals, but just breathing through your nose is like the way we're, I guess, kind of designed. And so when there was one study done in the book on cyclists that they had them do this ramp up workout, like some elite cyclists, like doing this ramp up workout to where they're eventually pushing out like 200 watts on the bike. Like I'm not a biker, so I don't really know how much 200 watts is, but that's what they mentioned. So it's like this, and these elite cyclists are just like just panting because they're like going full bore at the end. And then they redo the study and they asked them to do the same exact workout, only breathing through their nose. And what they found was when they were breathing through their nose, it became vastly easier for them to take way fewer breaths. So they were taking something like 47 breaths a minute when they were just doing it on their own, breathing however they wanted.
Right.
And then where they're asked to breathe out of their nose, some got as low as 14 breaths per minute, which is really low. That's 4 seconds. That's 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out. That was actually faster than that.
That's controlling your breathing for sure.
Yeah, but the thing is, you get actually a lot more air into your lungs for that many breaths. And one of the things they say in the book is that 5.5 breaths per minute is the right amount given the volume of your lungs and how much oxygen you can actually use from each breath, which that was one of the interesting things about it, was they're talking about, look, oxygen, like you can only get so much oxygen out of a breath. And the longer the breath is in your body, you actually kind of absorb more of it, which also makes sense. So when you're holding your breath, right, you're still absorbing more oxygen. So if you take a breath that lasts 1/10 of a second or a breath that lasts 1 second, your body has more time to absorb oxygen from it in the 1 second breath. So basically they said taking 61 second breaths isn't better than 6 10-second breaths potentially, So anyway, I went for a jog and I tried to not breathe out of my mouth the whole time. Now, this was easier said than done because after I'd say every like 5 minutes or so, I jogged for about half an hour. After every 5 minutes, I started to feel like I was suffocating to death. like I was underwater, like I just needed more air. But the thing was, at those points, like I would take a mouth breath to like catch myself up, or as many as I needed, whatever, usually like probably like 3 to 5. They weren't better. That was what was weird. So I'm jogging along, I'm doing okay. And then after a couple minutes, I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm going to suffocate. and then I'd take, and these bigger breaths, they weren't better breaths. That was what was weird. It felt like the air was just going into my mouth, not really going into my lungs. Whereas with the nose breaths, it felt profoundly like it was shooting right down into my lungs. And this is something that's why I would urge anyone who's active, who you're going to go exercise, to do this a little bit and see if you feel the same thing. Because the way I felt jogging for those, like, because again, it was probably like every 5 minutes or so, I felt like I needed more air. And it's like, okay, let's go back to the, and I really just didn't feel like it gave me more air. It just felt like mentally I was comfortable because my mouth's open, so I'm not going to die. Whereas you kind of feel a little trapped by only breathing out of your nose. But it was really fascinating. I mean, there's lots of stuff. Like, I think that the one thing about the human body, which I've probably lost a little bit in the last couple of years, is just like the tinkering. When I was a young strength coach and learning about it in college, I was eating new things. I was trying new supplements. I was just learning about all this stuff, right? And tinkering and trying new exercise and seeing how it affected my body. In the last like 5 years, like, you know, and you probably have found the same thing as a pro athlete, like you get on cruise control, right? You're still learning and adjusting your routine, but it's much smaller, right?
Right.
So this was one of the first things I can remember in recent memory that was like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to try that and experiment on myself and see how it is. And I have been breathing out of my nose in my strength training workouts, and it's definitely better. And every time I stopped, because I'm running through a city, and at times I have to stop for traffic lights, after jogging and then stopping, breathing just out of my nose is way better. It feels really like recuperative compared to mouth breathing. The only time it's a struggle at all is when I'm just like full on jogging. And I was like, I went up this really long hill. I felt like I was underwater a little bit at times, but that was also the first time I did it. So I'm curious, as I continue to like try to breathe only out of my nose in everything that I'm doing, how that starts to change some more. But on the first try, like I made it like 99.9% of my run only breathing out of my nose, which I thought was interesting. So,
well, it's a pretty impressive feat, because I feel like after about 3 minutes I'd be breathing just so I wouldn't pass out. So to like stay conscious of breathing out of your nose is part of the battle, I would think. No, because you're just almost running tight-lipped. And when I ran cross country in like grade school. I don't know, it was like a thing everybody did. You know, there was nothing during that season, so I ran cross country. And the coach would always tell you to, you know, like try and keep your jaw loose and just breathe out of your nose. Who knew my 8th grade cross country coach, who was basically just a dad, had so much insight on how the body worked? Because I remember him saying,
genius.
I remember thinking that like, that's not easy. Running just breathing out my nose, like that's not very easy. So I remember thinking that in like I saw your tweet, and I remember thinking like, oh, I've heard this before. Breathe out of your nose. I don't know why it's better. It feels normal. Feels like it's all going in the same spot. But it's interesting that you get how you describe it's not getting to my lungs. Like it's getting into me, but it's not getting into my lungs. That
really is how it felt. And it was surprising because, like I said, especially when I went up there's this really long hill where I live, and it's probably like if you're jogging it's probably like a 45-second or a minute long hill, and it's really steep. And like I said, when I got to these points where I felt like I need more air, it just like I didn't get it it was only like a mental benefit opening my mouth to get that air in, because it just felt like it was just like just sloshed around my mouth and went back out. I just didn't like get in there, which is not what I expected. That was I think what was interesting was that I try to, when I do tinker on myself, I try not to like go full placebo effect and like, oh, this is exactly what I thought it would be. Like I try to be objective, like, is this actually better? But it really does seem like there's something to it. And you wonder why people get away from it. Like if this was such a thing, like why do we breathe out of our mouth so much? But I don't really, when I'm in good shape, I don't breathe out of my mouth. And so that's why before I read this book, I was already breathing out of my nose the vast majority of the time in my strength training workouts, which I've just been recently back on track with, and also just like daily life. Because like I said before, like I feel like when you're in good shape, your reward is that your breathing is slower. like that's what I like about actually doing distance running. And I only distance run like 3 times a week, maybe, is that when your lungs are in good shape, you just like, you're not panting, doing normal things. Like that's like your reward. It's comfortable. Like you can just sit there and it's almost like you're not breathing. And when you're doing that, breathing under your nose, just like it's like a calming thing to do. It's easier. So anyway, I'm tired of talking about breathing. I feel like I got what I wanted to say out, but it was really interesting. If you're out there, I highly suggest trying it and seeing how you feel. But
Dan,
yeah,
Dan,
you have a Malort shirt. Did they send that to you?
They didn't, but I'm still waiting.
No, they didn't.
They didn't. Somebody sent it to me. Much appreciated for our unofficial sponsor, Jepson's Malort. Thank you for sponsoring episode 42 of the Morning Brushback. Dan, did you see history was made yesterday? Monday night.
I didn't.
History was made in the baseball world. I'm surprised you're not on top of that. San Francisco Giants had the first woman to coach in an on-field capacity in Major League Baseball. She coached first base. Alyssa Nakin, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Okay, I actually did see that. Yeah, I just didn't know what you were talking about.
She's the first woman to have a full-time coaching position in the major leagues, and she's also the first woman to coach in an on-field capacity. So first base coach. Thoughts, feelings? Good for her. I'm trying to find some more information on her background. And
I don't feel any sort of way about it. That's not me being negative, because I assume if you're not like super rah about it, I don't feel any strong way about it. I don't feel strongly about first base coaches in general. So
hey,
that's probably a big reason why. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know what her role is. I remember reading about her back in the day where it was kind of like she was going to be helping with some, I don't know, infield stuff, and it wasn't really clear through the articles that what I read, like what she was actually doing. I think, and this is just my, again, just like gut feelings about it. I think when, I know Rachel Balkovec is a hitting coach for a minor league team with the Yankee system, right? She's actually a hitting coach for one of the minor league teams. That to me feels more interesting because it seems like her role is much more hands-on. Coachy. I guess is how I would say it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's not a knock on Mr. Nakin or Mrs. Nakin at all. It's just like that feels like she's like really like a full in your face, like there every day coach. Yeah. Whereas first base coach is kind of like a ceremonial position. And I'm not saying that it's ceremonial for her as a female. It's ceremonial for guys, for everybody. It's like first base coach is like it's a afterthought position. That's why in a lot of the minor leagues in independent ball, a pitcher just goes out there and is first base coach. And again, I think at the major league level, she's probably not helping guys with their swings. She's probably not doing that kind of stuff. And I know that even like a lot of the major league coaches aren't doing that much because they're major leaguers. Like they're kind of like on cruise control. They're the best in the world. They kind of do their thing. Right. Yeah. So that's why when I think of like a female coaching position that makes me feel excited, like for the industry and for like, I think Rachel Balkovec is more important. Now this is obviously like a big breakthrough, but it just seems like she's really in the trenches and she's going to like be hands-on with a lot of guys and actually like shape their careers. And that could be off balance. That could be off base, my opinion. Certainly not taking it's a big milestone for women in the industry for sure. That's just my take on like the actual like coaching depth of the role. That's all.
Yeah. Being a professional first base coach myself.
It's a big deal. I mean, for sure.
It's definitely the least, how do I want to put it? You do the least out of the coaches. You're basically, I collect all the batting gloves and stuff, and I basically say back on a pickoff and make sure they see the signs. But it's less. It's not like coaching. So essentially, like you said, like the hitting coach, you're in the cage, you're working with guys, you're like kind of prepping them to get ready. First base coach during the game is you're kind of keeping them focused on the game. I mean, good for her. It looks like she played at Sacramento State as first baseman.
Yeah, she's clearly a good player. Yeah.
All conference, all 4 years. And then she's been with the Giants since 2014. So it says in the operations, as an intern and health and wellness. She's got a master's in sports management. So, I mean, this is like the path she wants, it seems like. But she won't be there in the dugout during the games. There's a 7-coach maximum, and she was hired after that. So I think just these exhibition games, have you seen any of these exhibition games?
No, I don't care at all about it.
It's brutal. It's brutal. I did watch the Yankees during the tournament. Went out to eat. Watching the Yankees Mets game was on TV, and I was watching a little bit. And I found it hilarious. They had cardboard cutouts of people's heads on the on each seat. I found that hilarious. Like, can you just send your face in, and will they print it out and just put you? Or is it all the season ticket holders, or they get like first crack?
Yeah, some teams have done that with their season ticket holders. Like you could like pay $50 or something, I think, and get your headshot out there. I don't know, but
I found that hilarious.
I think it's funny. I think more people should do it for sure.
I saw your tweet, Dan, and I have heavy, very important thoughts on this. Greatest post-game meal ever yesterday. What's your go-to? I've got big thoughts on this one.
This is funny. I don't know if I want to reveal my hand here.
All right. Well, let me give my take on it. First of all, it's such a vague tweet. I need more context here. Are we talking like A ball? Are we talking T ball? Because I mean, the T ball go-to meal is Capri Sun and bag of Doritos, and there's no other correct answer. That's the right answer for your T ball post-game meal. I need the Capri Sun, and I don't want the orange slices on ice. I want the Doritos. Give me the 25-cent bag of Doritos. That's the correct answer, and I'm sorry. But if are we talking A ball? Are we talking because the correct answer for A ball, for anyone listening, is always big league rehab guy, caters out, Outback Steakhouse, small steak, burnt to a crisp, mashed potatoes, and probably like a side of broccoli. All in a styrofoam to-go box. That is the post-game meal for the A-ball player of all post-game meals. Now, if it's rookie ball, the post-game meal, fingers crossed, is the old hot dogs and hamburgers that weren't sold in the stands, brought down to the clubhouse, laid on the table. Have at it, boys, because you don't get a post-game meal in those at that level. The college post-game meal, for me, we were in Chicago. I played a lot of games in local Chicago. A sub sandwich from a place in Spontano's in Chicago. That's the ultimate post-game for the NIU Husky Division I baseball player. What other levels are we talking about? High school post-game meal. I feel like your parents take you to the local Miller's Ale House and you can get a burger of some sort. Hopefully you got a few hits and your dad doesn't yell at you in the middle of the restaurant. What do you got for me, Dan? I mean, there are so many levels of the post-game meal. I got to imagine a big league post-game meal is so elaborate that you can't, it doesn't even, they're all the same. You've got the chef there. I mean, you can get egg white omelets post-game meal. That's not real. That's not a real post-game.
Bobby, I feel very conflicted to talk about this topic right now.
Should we wait? Should I give more thoughts on it?
I didn't write that tweet.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Who? You're a fake. You're a phony. You're a Twitter phony.
So one of the things that's been on my list is that I have to get more of my YouTube videos, my blog posts. They have to get reshared on my social media accounts. I have a lot of content that just needs to get redistributed, right? Most of my videos don't really go out of they're what you'd call evergreen, So anyway, someone who used to work for me is helping me with my social media and really just reposting. So in the future, when you see one of my YouTube videos get posted to my thing, it's because she is helping me put those into a social media scheduler, which will just once in a while recirculate an old YouTube video. So someone will see it on Twitter, right?
Right.
So in her work helping me get up and running with it yesterday, I was like, yeah, like you can post like whatever. And so she posted like a couple little things, and that was one of them. And it's very strange that you picked it out because I didn't actually write that, which is actually funny because her and I have known, I trained her since she was 15 and she's now 23. So we're close. We've known each other a long time. So I actually think it's a really funny experiment to see if anyone would ever know. I'm like, you can try to be Dan to see if you could ever identify a tweet that she might write. But in general, that's a really rare occasion. Like she's not really going to be tweeting for me. She's just going to be like helping me repost my content, which is like, hey, in this video, you'll see a curveball, you'll learn how to throw a curveball and this, click below, those things, which, just like any other like news source. So you'll still get Dan content. Like I'll still be on Twitter. It's actually the only one I'm actually active on. But anyway, so just kind of funny. That makes me laugh that of literally the one thing that she tweeted that wasn't an article, that you picked it out.
I'm all over it.
You're all over it.
And I have a great topic. I want to talk about it. I think it's great.
Well, and this is going to help us too, because we don't recirculate our old brushback episodes very well because we're both just like stretched for time.
Always. And
all these things, like, at the end of the day, you just get stretched a little thin where you need to figure out what your priorities are. I could like sit down and like carve out 3 hours a week to get my social media stuff out there, but it's just like not the best use of my time. Like I have other stuff that's important to me that only I can do that I need to get done. And that's just like where we're at right now. So anyway, let me tell you my worst post-game meal. My rookie season, we were in Chicago playing the Windy City Thunderbolts team. After it was the getaway day, which means the last day before you leave town, or right, the day you do leave town. So in the Frontier League, they often don't feed you well after games. And this was no exception. So we were getting on the bus to go like 5 hours to Kalamazoo, Michigan, 5 or 6. And so we needed to be fed well because we were just getting right on the bus right afterwards. And we were going to be driving overnight, arriving at like 4 or 5 a.m. And it was like the most disgusting meal I'd ever seen. It was like out of the freezer section in the grocery store. It was like TV dinners essentially. Ugh. And it was like all I remember was like purple meats floating in like purple gravy. That's literally, I just looked at them like, I am absolutely not eating this. Like I was starving. Ew. And I don't know if I pitched that night, but it was disgusting. I'm like, I'm just absolutely not putting that in my body. And we were all pissed. And the problem is some towns, and Kalamazoo, Michigan was one of them, like we just had to get on the bus. You usually get down like an hour down the road or 2 hours down the road before you stop, right? Just like get some of the trip done. So we didn't really have anything to eat on like after the game. And then we get 2 hours down the road. Now it's 1 a.m. and some small towns, there just isn't anything open. And that's quickly what it became. So we pulled into Kalamazoo at like 4 a.m. and we were like, we need food. And literally nothing was open. So we pulled into a McDonald's that was 24 hours, but it was only drive-through. And our assistant coach went over and begged them to serve us. And we sat in the bus for probably an hour before finally they came back out with 50 or 60 double cheeseburgers and like 50 orders of fries. Nice. And that was actually the first time and only time I've ever eaten a McDonald's hamburger.
What?
Yep.
Yep. Wait, hold on.
Yep.
We're talking of just a burger from McDonald's.
First and only time I've ever eaten a McDonald's burger.
Where do I begin?
Dude, as a kid, I was kind of a picky eater, so I'd always choose like chicken rather than like. Dude, McDonald's burgers look disgusting. Let's just be honest here. As a kid, I was like, screw that. I'm not eating that sausage weirdness patty. It's disgusting. It doesn't look like real meat.
When's the last time you had McDonald's?
That day, that night.
That's the last time.
No, that's not true. Their chicken nuggets are still amazing every now and again. I don't ever want to go there because number one, McDonald's is expensive. It's like sneaky expensive these days.
Not really.
Yes, it is. If you get a normal,
Double
like one of their
cheeseburger.
decent sandwich, if you're not ordering off the dollar menu, it gets expensive in a hurry. It really does. It's surprising. You can't get out of there if you get like a normal like meal. If you get a combo meal, you can't get out of there for less than $8, $9. That's the climate of the world these days.
That's the
Steak
beauty.
and shake is still the best value anywhere. Actually, a good fast food burger that's actually real meat and that's actually delicious and legit. I miss steak and shake every day of my life. Every day of my life.
What?
But yeah, I just
absurd.
never wanted to eat. I never wanted to eat a McDonald's burger as a kid. And then when in college, like, why would I then? I was very healthy eater, like crushing it in the gym, like very health and performance conscious. I don't know how McDonald's fits into that. And then in pro ball, it's the same thing. It's like, I've never eaten a McDonald's burger. Why am I going to start now?
So I had a similar experience in Indy just this past week. I was down there Wednesday. We had a 9:15 start time on Wednesday night for a game. So game gets over. I don't know. I didn't get out of the field until probably like 12:15. Like the game went long. I'm driving back to the hotel in small town Indiana. Nothing to eat. I had not eaten since we had a doubleheader, so I had not eaten since like 2 o'clock. And I'm driving past the hotel, and there's McDonald's there, and it's the only thing open. Like not even like a gas station, nothing. So I go to the drive-through, and I order like a chicken sandwich, fries, and like a iced tea or something. I get up there, mind you, McDonald's. If there's one thing that McDonald's does, it makes their food quickly, throws it out the window, and gets you on your way. No, sir. Not in Fishers, Indiana. Fishers, Indiana, I was sitting there waiting to order for like 8 minutes before someone came on the speaker with about 10 cars in front of me. So the whole process took a legitimate 30 minutes for me to, from pulling up to order to getting food. So by the time I get up to the window, I'm standing there. Nobody comes to the window. And then this guy comes up and he's like, "Have you paid?" I was like, "No, man, I haven't paid yet." And so I give him a card. I pay. Gives me a drink. Gives me a bag. It doesn't occur to me to check because at that point I had been there forever. So I drive away. I put the straw in the drink. It was a Dr. Pepper, which was not part of the order. It was a Big Mac and an apple pie. So nothing even remotely close to what I ordered was put into that bag or into that cup and given to me. I'm not even sure what I paid for. I don't know if I paid for somebody else's meal or if I paid for what I actually ordered, but it was an odd McDonald's experience for a place that, if nothing else, is usually pretty regimented in how they get you through the line and get you out. Hilarious.
Well, that is what made them famous. McDonald's invented that whole system.
Automated system,
fast food is, yeah, I mean.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
The Dr. Pepper threw me off when I took a drink of it.
The doctor. Well, the two best in the industry at actually being quick on fast food is Chick-fil-A and Portillo's. Most people don't know Portillo's unless you're a Chicago area within like a 2-hour radius, but Portillo's is very good about their communication and their flow through employees. It's not always super fast because their food is, it's a little more made to order. It's not like fast food, but Portillo's is a pretty impressive operation, I would say. Although I will say that the Bloomington Normal location sucks. The quality control there is just not good. But the Chicago locations are always great.
It's a very popular place in Chicago. Not my favorite, but it's definitely consistent.
Well, that's the thing I miss about the Midwest is Italian beef. It's a great food. If you're ever out there, find yourself a Portillo's, an Al's beef. Either are good. Man,
bring it over.
Yeah,
I'll bring you a whole bag, a greasy bag full of them.
So, are you doing anything to watch this MLB stuff or what? It's MLB stuff.
No, I mean the only reason I caught the game is because we were sitting at a bar and grill, and it was on the bar TV between games watching. And I actually asked the guy I said, "Is this live or is this?" I didn't know what I was watching. Like it was, like I said, Mets. I think it was Mets Yankees game on, and then there was a Cardinals Reds, somebody Cardinals,
Yeah,
somebody.
so they're exhibition games, right?
Yeah, and it just like they had the tents. They honestly had like the travel ball parent tent, that in the stands. Like half the players were sons, so they weren't in the dugout. It was unwatchable baseball. Like I had no interest. The only interest I had were the cardboard cutouts in the stands. Like that was very interesting to me, trying to figure out who those people were. Were they celebrities because it's New York City? Were they the fans? Were they just people they found on the internet? Who are these people? Were they employees? That's the only thing I was asking about. I didn't watch one pitch. I didn't care to watch it. I mean, there's no, I have no interest. I really don't. Maybe it'll be more interest when the games matter, if it's like playoff time. Like I love playoff baseball. That is why you watch baseball. I mean, playoff baseball to me, like in a regular season, is the best. The games are staggered. Like you get to watch a lot of competitive, strategic, very talented laden baseball games in a short period of time. Whereas the day-to-day baseball gets monotonous because the guys get days off. Like you don't necessarily see those high-profile matchups. Like Yankees Mets still might not feature both teams starting lineups and both aces. You could see a spot start. You could see a bullpen day. You could see Aaron Judge and Derek Jeter sitting out. Whatever. I just have no interest. Maybe I'm in the minority because live sports are back and that's just something finally to watch. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can't go out to a bar to watch it. Well, I guess you can, but I haven't been to an indoor restaurant yet. I don't really have like strong plans to do so. I don't own a TV. I actually have never owned a TV as an adult.
I'll send you. Want me to send you one?
No, I don't. I don't like the ritual of sitting on a couch and watching TV. Obviously, I've done that in my life when I lived with my roommate. We had a TV, like blah 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 blah. Like I'm a normal human, but I am not motivated to get a TV. Never have been.
When in my playing days as a nomad, essentially, I'd come home. You're similar to me as well. Like I'd come back to Chicago. I would never live at home. I'd always get an apartment, something. There never had television, which I felt like was great. Like now we have a
We're
TV.
so cool. We're so cool. You're just sitting there reading philosophy, right?
No, I was out. If I went to watch TV, I was at a bar watching a TV. But you definitely don't realize how much time you spend watching TV when you have one. Like even I know the phone, is kind of taking place of the television. Essentially, like people consume YouTube and all kinds of things on their phone. But
also a good topic.
Yeah,
I'm planning something, Robert.
You have these topics we can't discuss, like the post-game meal.
No, we can discuss it. Well, first, one thing I do want to discuss is, did you see that Henderson Alvarez has signed with the Milwaukee Milkmen of the American Association indie ball team?
No, I don't know who that is.
Henderson Alvarez was a big up and coming pitcher with the Marlins, if I'm remembering him correctly. And he was like really good, but this was like, he has not been healthy since, like 2014. He was legit, like up and comer. Like he was there with Jose Fernandez. He was good, like mid 90s, just filth. And then he just has he's only made like 3 appearances in the last 4 years or something because he's been hurt.
Oh, I see it here. He did that weird thing every first pitch. Do you know that? Do you know about
I don't
this?
specifically remember, but I mean, he was an all-star in 2014 in Miami, 265 ERA. I mean, he was good. So it's just funny that people, and then the other one that I found interesting is Brian Shaw got released by the Rockies. You know who Brian Shaw is?
Oh yeah.
He was with the Indians when they almost won the World Series, when the Cubs beat them. When they just had the filthiest bullpen of all time. They had Andrew Miller. I can't remember the other guy who threw the curveball that was like 82. And they had Brian Shaw, who was just run out there throwing 95 mile per hour cutters.
Yeah.
And last year, Brian Shaw's year was like 5.9 ERA. I think people just oftentimes forget how hard it is to be a major leaguer. One, from an injury standpoint, you can just be legit and just be left behind. Like if you just can't go out there and pitch, like obviously that seems obvious, but there are way more players who, if you really think hard, you're like, oh yeah, what happened to that guy? What happened to that guy? What happened to that guy? They just had a bad year or two, whether it was for injuries or performance, and then they're just like, you never hear from them again. They just like slip off into the wilderness like an old dog, you know? And
dog.
Yeah, gotta go find a place to curl up and go to sleep. But Brian Shaw, it's like, how does that happen? The dude throws a 95 mile per hour cutter. All the like, how does, you know what I mean? And then suddenly he's like not pitching well. Same thing with Blake Trinan. Remember him? He's still in the big leagues. He's with the Dodgers now, but he had like a 1.8 ERA season, right? Where he had that breakout season, just throwing 97 mile per hour insane sinkers. And then next year he had like a 5 ERA. Last year he had like a 5 ERA. He had a rough season. And if something little's off, like maybe you have a little nagging injury, you know, a guy can go from hitting 300 to 250. Little nagging injury or just like something's wrong. You go from having a 3 ERA to a 5, and suddenly your whole career is in jeopardy, essentially. It's it's a lot more, big league careers are much more fragile than I think people realize, because you kind of tend to stay focused on the big names. Like, you know, if you're in the Chicago area, like there's fixtures in the lineup, right? There's Anthony Rizzo at first base. There's Chris Bryant's always there. Like you have your guys that make this team seem like the team is always moving forward. But how many guys have just been like, they're just not there anymore, right? Even from recent memory, they're just gone. And you're like, oh yeah, what happened to him? He was good. He was like integral. And the next year they're not even a part of it, right?
Right.
It's much more fickle and fleeting than people realize. And every time I see a big name like that, where it's like, oh yeah. Like Derek Lee was, I think, one of the best ones. Derek Lee was like a all-star household name until he wasn't. And then he was gone he was like all-star household name to like 2 years later being gone, erased from memory. You're like, where did Derek Lee go?
He went to the Orioles.
Yeah, which is a place anyone with a career goes to die.
Yeah. That was my era.
My good old hometown. Yeah.
That was my era. So Brian Shaw is an interesting one because I have a question for you about this. Okay. He was with Colorado, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
I know what you're going to ask. Go ahead.
Will there ever be a successful pitcher in Colorado, like a Hall of Fame caliber pitcher that plays his career in Colorado? I mean, I just looked up the Hall of Famers from Colorado Rockies, and there's only one, and it was this year.
Well, what I thought you were going to ask me was his cutter negatively affected by the thinner air of Colorado? And I immediately thought about that as well. But then they said they ran his numbers and he pitched better in Colorado than he did up on the road. So
maybe that's not it. But
that's not it. No, the variables are, I don't know. They're interesting.
Like the best Colorado pitcher I can remember of recent memory was Ubaldo Jimenez.
Yeah, he was also all-star, like legend, then got paid, and then was done being good.
Also
forever.
Went to the Orioles. There you go.
Yep.
As I'm looking through, I got an interesting trivia question for you about the Hall of Fame. So what team is Cy Young's cap in the Hall of Fame?
The Cincinnati Barn Burners. I don't know.
It is the Cleveland Spiders. I did not know that was a team. But after he left in 1898, they went 20-134, and they folded. So he essentially folded the team by leaving.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Greg Holland, another good one. Connor, appreciate you mentioning that. Greg Holland was another one. He's an all-star of the Royals, right? And then just like he got Tommy John, I think, and then he's been struggling to get back. I know he's with the Rockies now. I'm pretty sure, but. I
mean, I don't know if you're ever going to see a guy that plays his whole career and wears a Rockies cap into the Hall of Fame. It's going to be impossible.
What about Larry Walker?
But he's a hitter.
Oh, I was talking about pitchers. Yeah. It'd be tough. They would park adjust it probably, and then FIP would be an important one. This is one of the reasons that people. You know, I know there's some haters to the new stats and stuff, but FIP and adjusting for the park is important. That's a good factor. So fielding independent pitching is the 3 true outcomes. So walks, strikeouts, and homers allowed. And they predict pretty well, actually, what your ERA would end up being. And they can also control for ballpark variables, too. So
yeah, it just feels wild. Feels wild that there's going to be, like, your career just takes a nosedive.
Well, and you see this. I mean, there's a lot of variables at play that people don't think about. And I'll give you an example. When I was with Camden in the Atlantic League, we were not great. Like, we were bottom of the barrel. And part of this was that we had a not good second baseman who had no range, who was also lazy. And I like him. He's a good dude. But I mean, he would have to admit what he was at that point too, which is just like, I'm going to show up and play and that's it. And I'm out of shape, whatever. Our shortstop was good, but he was older and didn't have the range of some of these other guys. And in the Atlantic League, one of the most premium players on each team is the shortstop. And I mean that in the sense that they tended to pay their shortstops and they're like big league shortstops on a bunch of Atlantic League teams, right?
Yeah.
And so pitching, for my team, there are balls that you're like, off the bat, you're like, oh, cool, double play. Then you're like, oh, that's a single that went to the outfield.
That's
like, oh. And then you go on the road and you play some of these other teams that have like a AAA second baseman and a AAA shortstop and a AA third baseman, and no ground balls leave the infield. They all get gobbled up. And my buddy Matt Zielinski, who pitched for Somerset for like 3 or 4 years, and Matt's a really very accomplished, great pitcher. I just watched him because he was pitching against us, and I just watched him get, like, he had a kind of a rough inning where it was like single, and then he gets like a pop out, so it's like first and second and no one out, and then one of our guys hits an absolute piss missile into the gap between short and third, and their shortstop, who was a former big leaguer, Edwin Masonette, lays out for it, snags it, which was like, how did he get to that ball? Then shoots up to his knee, fires a missile to second base, turns double play, ends the inning. And I'm like, that scores a run for them if that's my team in the field. Like, you know, I care about my teammates on our infield, but just objectively, Matt's got a better ERA. And I was just like thinking, I'm like, if I pitched on their team, my ERA might be half a run better, if not more than that. Like anyone's ERA, if they have that defense, it just improves. You know, and so he had like a low 3 ERA that year. And I was like, dude, if you pitched for Camden, you probably have like a 3.9. Like, it's not a knock on you. It's just like, because that ball is a single and it scores a run. And now you have first and second again with 1 out and a run's in versus the inning's over. You know what I mean? That's a huge difference. And if that happens 5 or 10 times during a season, that could be the difference in 10 runs, you know, and that's a run on your ERA. So people don't appreciate that. I also realized that, and this isn't like me having sour grapes, because I was almost always on losing teams and I just like did what I could do. But in college, I realized this too. Like, you go play some of these big teams on like better fields with like, and you're like, yeah, if I pitched for Auburn, the plays they make behind you, you know, compared to pitching for a small Division I where our shortstop just like wasn't that good and just like didn't have very good range, and our grass was super thick, so balls would kind of die. So not every ball that could be double play could become a double play.
Yeah.
You just start to realize like bloopers that fall in that your outfielders or infielders can't quite get. I mean, like, the premium range that really high level D1 players have is impressive. And pro guys, that's the biggest jump in my opinion, from college to pro, is the quality of the range of infielders, especially going back on balls. And that's a thing you've probably seen in amateur ball. How many times do guys hit balls in 14U baseball, 16U baseball that fall almost in the dirt? They're like 15 feet out of the infield and it falls.
I know.
It makes you want to pull your hair out. You're like, that ball's got to be caught. And I'll say that to kids as they come in, and I'll be like, that ball has to be caught. And they're like, I couldn't get to it. I'm like, don't tell me that you couldn't get to it. That ball is 20 feet out of the infield. If you can't catch that ball, you can't play college baseball. That's what I'm telling you. That ball has to be caught. Go find a way to catch it. Don't tell me you couldn't catch it. I saw where it landed. It landed embarrassingly close to the infield. Go catch that ball.
So I had this talk, I guess not a talk, but I was basically yelling all weekend at kids at random baseball things. But the striking thing I noticed, I was coaching 15U baseball, so kids that just are going in their sophomore year of high school. We played a kid from Kentucky who's getting recruited by Vanderbilt as a shortstop. Cuban kid just came over from, just moved here a couple years ago. And I just kept telling our guys, I go, is anybody watching their shortstop play? I go, he's bored playing against you guys. Like he is, and our team is good. Like our 15U team is talented. Like they'll have some high level players on it, no doubt. I'm like, this kid is bored. I go, for one, look at his positioning. Because we get a lot of you see a lot of 14, 15-year-old kids. They get their first time on a pro-sized diamond, or at least like a college-sized diamond, 60, 90 diamond. And when they play shortstop or second base, they're basically playing like halfway between the infield grass and the outfield grass, which is not the proper place to play.
Correct.
For anybody that's asking, like you play.
Yep, halfway.
You play on the cut of the outfield grass, and you adjust, your positioning, whatever. Well, this kid was like 2 steps into the outfield. Granted, we were playing on turf, so he could be, but he was 2 steps into the outfield. Balls hit to him, and he's throwing guys out how a normal college level shortstop would throw guys out, with time to spare. And our guys are catching balls, and every play is like bang, bang, because they want to take their 2 shuffles, pat the glove, and throw. And you see that, I see it so much in all the positions. The kids literally have no idea where they should be playing. And similar to what you said, I mean, there's balls that go into that Bermuda Triangle of, over the first baseman, second baseman's got to come over, right fielder, whatever. And so many of those balls drop barely into the outfield grass because the second baseman is in no man's land where he's playing. And the first baseman is usually just standing right next to the base because he has no idea where he's supposed to play either. And the right fielder is normally either way too deep, way too shallow, or way too close to the foul line. Like he's never in the vicinity of proper positioning. So the gaps are so incredibly huge in a youth game because the 2 corner guys are like off the line 5 steps and the center fielder's dead center directly. So the gaps are humongous. So I mean, it's one of the things I was harping on after the game to the kids, is that you didn't need to be on the field the last 3 months to have any idea of where you should be standing on the field or where the ball should go when it's hit. And I get that, try not to harp on like physical mistakes because whatever, the kids haven't been playing as much. Like there's all kinds of issues going on, on the physical side. But
I'm glad you brought that up because it's weird and it's frustrating to see that. I mean, I would say, because I coached 15U baseball and 14U, man, I was like coaching I was like head coaching for a little while, both teams, when we had some like staffing issues. And I was pretty involved with both of our 14 and 15U teams last year. And I would say 90% of teams, their shortstop and second baseman always play out of position. I'd say honestly 90%. And that's not me being like a hater on like youth coaches. It's just they're either not taught or the coaches don't see it. They don't understand that they're in the wrong position. But you're right. The vast majority of players play halfway the whole time, which halfway is halfway between the cutout of the grass and the arc of the thing. And when I asked players about this, and this was, I mean, our first year of having our academy, I joined up with our 16U team, which they were a very strong team. And same thing, our starting shortstop played halfway the whole time. Like JD, that's not double play depth. I'm like, do you know where double play depth is? He's like, just like kind of like blank stare. I'm like, look, double play depth it's not this like magical spot, but it's basically, can you get to second base if a 1 hopper's hit to your second baseman? Right. I mean, is that in general, that's what it has to be, right? Because
my rule is if the ball's hit right at you, you need to be able to underhand flip. So that's my rule for like double play depth for the kids. So like that, it might be a step closer.
It's like what,
to the
six steps and six. It's 6 steps over and 6 steps back, or 8 steps over, 8 steps back, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I use the cutout of the pitcher's mound to like help with a visual for some of the guys, but in general, like if you get in that vicinity where you can flip it, fine. Like you're in a decent spot. But we've got guys that are just standing at their normal spots. Like
they're so far. And like, look, I'm like, what kind of balls become? This is how I describe them. Like, what kind of balls become double plays? They're like, well, hard hit ground balls, right? I'm like, slow hit ground balls, you get 1 out max. Medium ground balls, you sometimes get 2, but usually you get 1. Hard hit ground balls that are pretty close to you, those are double play balls. So I'm like, if it's hit hard to you, you're gonna have it in your mitt in a quarter of a second, half a second. And at that point, what needs to happen? You need to get rid of it to second base as fast as you can, which means he has to be there by that point or be very close. So I'm like, so basically you have to be close enough to second base, whether you're shortstop or second baseman, to be there in 1 second, right? Like that's the standard. Like if you're way over in the hole and it takes you 2 seconds to get there, you can't turn that double play. So it's not double play depth, right? That's the theory of it. That's why you have to play closer. So you can be there when that missile's hit your second baseman. But yeah, they don't have, and then they're cutting down the range, playing halfway, and more bloopers are falling in. And it's honestly baffling how often kids are playing out of position in the infield. They just like don't know. And then third baseman playing 2 steps from the bag on a lefty. It's like, dude, how, like, you really protecting the line? Like, well, your grandma is your grandma on a lawn chair next to third base, so you got to be there to protect her.
It's not even the line. Like I moved our third baseman in like 2 steps into the grass, and they're like freaking out. I'm like, it's a lefty leadoff guy. I go, if he hits the ball at you, it's not going to be a screamer. Like he's not turning on it. He's just slapping it at you. I go, I'm more concerned with the bunt. I'm more concerned about this kid laying one down than I am him turning on it.
Plus, they're going to hit one into the shortstop, the 5-6 hole 10 times more often. They're going to fillet one behind you down the line. Like literally probably 10-to-1 ratio of balls into that gap than that gap.
Also, the phrase no doubles means
anything and nothing now.
It means nothing to anybody, which is annoying because I like to say it because it makes total sense. And there's nothing I could say because they don't understand it.
How do you feel about no doubles defense? Do you participate in it?
I participated in it with the infielders, like the corner guys, because I would prefer balls not get down the line. Because a lot of kids when they hit, like younger guys, especially the better hitters with quick hands, like they will turn on balls and they will smoke them down the line for doubles. I mean, the outfield guys, I'd prefer to just keep them straight up, make your plays. I don't want your backs against the wall. It's not like our guys come in on the ball any better than they go back on the ball. So it's especially in youth level.
Agreed. But, yeah, the field dimensions almost never make sense to really go back that far.
No,
because then you end up just exposing so much of the field to every blooper falls in. If you get way to the lines, every medium fly ball into the gap falls in. And then you're just like, you're in the same position where, all right, now they're maybe going to steal second base. It was a double anyway. So, yeah.
Well, we had a ball hit this weekend where it was just hit at the left fielder, essentially like 2 steps to his left, and the kid just never stopped, took second base, no problem. And I was baffled. Like, you don't see that at higher level baseball. Like, you don't see singles just – you didn't stretch it into a double.
The game is just so much slower, and you fail to appreciate how fast the game is in college and pro ball. I remember after watching 15U all summer, we went to an Indianapolis Indians game, which is AAA, and like start to finish, it's like so fast. I mean, they hit the ball to the wall, and just the play is over in 7 seconds. The guy's staying on second base. Whereas you get a double in 15U baseball, it's like a 20-second affair. Everyone's just trotting around. Like the throw comes in. It's just like so much faster. It's crazy fast in pro ball, just start to finish every play.
Yeah,
just the ball speeds, running speeds. The slow guys are faster than your fast guys in high school. It's crazy, but yeah, I mean the no doubles thing is fundamentally different in like high level college or pro ball because guys can hit it over their head, and so if it's like 2-1 the eighth, you might have the outfielders play in a position where it's like, hey, if it's over your head, it's a home run.
Yeah.
That way, they're gonna give up those couple singles, knowing that hey, 2 singles isn't gonna score a run here, and we've got one of our best pitchers in. So if we're gonna play back a little bit to avoid the double where they can then bunt them over and then sack them in, that makes a little more sense because now it forced them to get 3 singles to beat us. But in amateur baseball, where they're not going to hit a ball over your head very often anyway, it doesn't make sense to start putting guys that far out because it's almost impossible to reach as it is. And it ends up screwing you over.
But you're like coaching to the other lesser skills, like taking an angle to the ball, like a ground ball in the gap, because I've seen like even our best outfielder, like straight across, they miss the ball by 2 steps and then it's straight back to the fence and it's a home run. Like it's a home run essentially at that point. And the one thing I have trouble with teaching wise is cutoffs, because you can't teach proper cutoffs with some of the arms that a lot of these kids have, where especially on like a ball in the gap. Like I'm just basically hoping that they give the ball to my shortstop who's got the strongest arm. Like he's the only kid who can make a throw from outside of 120 feet that'll get to a spot, like maybe on a line. You know, we do a lot of like, you know, pre-game infield, outfield stuff at practice. And it's, you know, you hit a ground, you know, single to left field, cut 4, and it's supposed to be the third baseman. Well, if the third baseman stands where he's supposed to stand, the ball's never going to get to him. So like the third baseman ends up having to go out to be the cutoff guy. And it just turns into like an ugly form of what you would consider proper baseball.
Yeah.
It's like trying to, you know, until they become teenagers, I feel like my basic rule is the shortstop's to cut on every single play, unless it's down the right field line. Then the second baseman can go be the cut. Everything else, second baseman, everybody covers their base. Shortstop has no base. He goes be cut. And I don't know how else to teach it when there's literally kids that can't make the throw 100 feet. Like you need like 3 guys, like a relay race to get the ball in. And it's very frustrating to watch. It's also not their fault. Like they're young. I get it. But you still like, how do you balance teaching them the proper way versus teaching them like what they could actually do?
Yeah. Got a question. Are double cuts not a thing in baseball? They're not a thing in higher level baseball, because once you have a strong enough arm to throw it 180 feet, off your back leg, picking it up off the fence, which takes more arm strength than just like being able to crow hop it, right?
Right.
Once you can chuck it 180 feet, picking it up and turning, double cuts don't exist anymore. So,
no, I mean, they exist in the sense that the second baseman is always going to be like a trail guy on a bad throw. And he's really he's not a double cut. Like he's never going to receive the baseball as part of the cut play.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Which he shouldn't in youth baseball either. He's just a backup guy on a bad throw, which happens a lot more in youth. So like you really do need it. But no, they're not like a thing. Like the shortstop should be able to handle even a bad throw unless it's over his head. So essentially, I mean, if you make a bad throw, you're really not getting anybody out anyways. So you're just risking like the double being turned into a double +1 base. But it's really it's not a thing. It's a thing we work on a lot, but it's not. Once you get to a level of professional baseball where guys throw hard enough to make people watch, Division I, low, minor leagues, there's no double cuts.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. No, there isn't. I mean, why would you have a second cutoff man? I mean, center fielder can hit the shortstop in the chest from anywhere. And the shortstop's got a cannon. Right. So there just doesn't need to be another person in between that. But I mean, the biggest thing with cuts for us, for all, younger ages, like they don't know how to orient themselves. And that just takes feel and time and being a good athlete of, watching the throw drifting over there so you can receive it on your glove side and make a quick turn. And we worked on that in our throwing routines. But so many kids just like, okay, I got it. And then they just wheel around 180 degrees and it takes forever. And it's really impressive. And these are things that people don't really watch or they don't really see when they're watching baseball. I think the things that get missed, that unless someone alerts you to look at them, a couple prominent ones are catcher receiving, like what catchers do with their mitt before the pitch comes and how they move through it. That's something that you will never see that as a casual fan until someone points it out to you, because you just like won't think to like really examine what they're doing and why. Another one is infield positioning, as far as like the third baseman and the first baseman, like where they're shading left and right. Because they go, I mean, third baseman and first baseman are very far into the hole.
Right.
Depending on the handedness of the hitter and the situation, where people don't really see that. And especially younger players playing third base, like they're always close to third base, where it's like, no, dude, you can be 20 feet off and deep into the hole, because again, the odds of them hitting it backhand between you and the line is very slim. And the other one is just how good shortstops and second basemen are at receiving cutoffs on the right side, on the correct side of their body, and making this just like lightning fast glove side turn to the next target.
Right.
Because that's something you only, like, you don't think about it in pro ball. It's just automatic. But then when you go back to youth baseball and you're like, oh, these kids don't know how to do that, we need to work on it. You know, then you start to, coming from the pro game without being an active coach, there's a lot of stuff you take for granted.
Sure.
And this was a learning curve for me in my first couple years back, where it's like, oh yeah, we got to work on that because they're terrible at it, because maybe they've never been taught that before, or it just gets overlooked, right? And I mean, you lose games that way sometimes. I mean, it's hard to blame a loss on any one thing, but when it's like, you know, guys wheeling around third, like you're hoping to get him at home, and then you see your shortstop like catch it at his chest and then turn and throw, and then he's safe by a step. You're like, damn it. If that turn was better, he's out, which is 100% true. You get a stronger throw off because you're already moving your body glove side, and it's faster. It's like glove to hand. It's already out on its way again. So that's stuff you have to practice. I know a lot of youth teams do practice that, but it's not second nature, because you got to be a good, like when that throw's coming in from the outfielder and it's hanging up in the air on its way to use a shortstop, you got to what? Just start to like figure out where you got to go, almost like an outfielder tracking the ball, right? I mean, you're a shortstop.
Right.
Just kind of instincts and just like reading them.
There's so many things in youth baseball. It's like you watching it and like, this should be done a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, Bob, I think we're going to wrap for the day, but we talked about a lot of nonsense that wasn't useful to anyone early on, and then we got into some good baseball stuff later. So
feels like the trend.
If we had anyone still listening after talking about fast food and nostril breathing, then they got a lot of good infield info today. But chances are we lost all of our listeners early going off topic. So
no doubt. Well, that's fine.
Well, Bobby, I hope you have a litigation-free couple days until Friday. And if you're out there listening, thanks for being here. Be sure to leave us a review, share the show, and we will see you here on Friday for the morning brushback.